Hey, this is going to be commentary for chapter 33 of my book Metadimensional, which you can find on Kindle or listen to as an audiobook on Google Play, and links are in the description. So chapter 33 is called Experiential Alignment. So as I mentioned in the commentary for the previous chapter, I think, there's a similarity between artificial intelligence and brains in the architecture. They both use the neural network computational model. Artificial intelligence uses the artificial variant of it, which instead of using neurons like neuron cells, it uses matrices but it ultimately does the same thing. And what most people gather from that is because artificial intelligence can produce intelligent behaviors, then the role of the brain is to produce intelligent behaviors. That's what it does. It is the intelligence is embedded in the brain. And the experiential qualities of thought, of intellectual capacities in biological experiential agents is seen as epiphenomenal, as if it doesn't matter. It doesn't. The experiential aspect of thought doesn't do anything. It just follows the computational aspects of the neural network, which can be emulated by an artificial intelligence machine. Basically, that's the assumption. Now, without going into all my arguments why that is wrong, like specifically if you assume that experience is fundamental, then assuming that experience does nothing is it's incoherent. But ask yourself, do you really think that your experience of thought does nothing? That it's all done by the brain, your thoughts, the way you move from one thought to the next adds nothing to the process. Is that what you think? Now, if you assume that that's not true, then you get into a bit of get a question so if the experiential capacities are doing some of the thought, or maybe what's the extent, how much of it is done by experience and how much of it is done by the brain? You need to understand, if it's done by the brain, then it's not done by experience, and anything that is done by experience is not done by the brain in the physicalist sense, unless you're going to say that experience is you can only say that experience is epiphenomenal. But if you don't assume that, as I said, then you have a problem. So you have then the possibility of considering that the thought is done by experience, but then what does the brain do? I mean, yes, it does some of the. It's definitely involved in intellectual capacities, that's for sure. But it's not like you can say that people with smaller heads are necessarily dumber than people with bigger heads. Sometimes, but not all the time, there's brilliant people with rather small heads, rather small brains in terms of mass. So that's not exactly what's going on here, right? Doesn't seem like it. So now consider the other option. Let's say that all of the intellectual capacities are done by experience. I'm not saying that's true, but let's say for the sake of argument that's true. Then what could the brain be doing then? I mean, it knows what to do, what artificial intelligence does, which is to classify patterns in data and trigger behaviors accordingly. That's basically what artificial intelligence knows how to do. But it doesn't do it for any intellectual reason. I mean, I'm not saying that's true, but I'm saying that's the opposite opinion. But then what does it do? Now, so put that aside. Remember, you have like this artificial intelligence capable architecture in your head, but it's not doing thinking. It's doing something else. Now consider the other thing. You know that if you followed my arguments thus far, then you will know that there's this separation between whatever the artificial intelligence component does, whatever the physicalist component of the brain does, and the experiential qualities. The experiential qualities are not, they cannot be the product of the mechanical physical brain, because everything about the mechanical physical brain is accounted for by physicalist processes, which none of them require any argument by experience. So you have here you need something to calibrate, to align the experiential component with the physicalist biological component, like the body, all that stuff. And you have and you have a free artificial intelligence system that doesn't seem to do anything. And you have the intellectual capacities and experience. Now, of course, again, this is like, I'm simplifying it, but what you get then is you start to realize that the role of the brain is exactly that, to interface, to using the same neural network architecture that we use in artificial intelligence. It uses that to classify, to create a classification algorithm, but for mechanism, but for what? To tell this is this is that. Well, you have this thing, you have this mechanical thing, the brain, and then you have the experiential component, which is necessarily not a part of it, and you need something to connect them. How would you map one to the other? You have to have some kind of a mapping mechanism, and consider now the fact that the separation between experience and the body means that there's a huge alignment problem. There's a lot of places where experience can go and the body won't, and you need a mechanism to keep them in sync. That mechanism is the brain, and the process is what by which they are made the same is what I call experiential alignment. This is what happens when a baby is born. Their brain is not aligned. Their experience inherits the same intellectual capacities as you have. They know all this stuff that you know, like love, hate, annoyance, pleasure. They understand all that stuff. Betrayal, trust. They know all that stuff, but they don't have any way to map this to this body that they have. And during infancy, what they need is what that brain needs to learn how to map its mechanical, physical manifestation to the experiential component that it needs to map to. And this actually opens the door to other questions, like what about the state where a baby is not 100% aligned yet, and sometimes when the alignment is not sufficient, is there a baby there, or is it that the body of the mother is the thing that is actually experiential, the thing that mobilizes that body, while the experiential alignment is too low? And then what happens in the crossover? That opens the door to the option that there's some kind of experiential inheritance from mothers to babies. I'm not saying that necessarily happens, and it might not be crucial because you have test tube babies. I mean, technically, so but there still could be some kind of experiential alignment, experiential inheritance component to it. I'm not sure here, like if it goes here or there, but it's possible.